Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Rajiv Kamal Kumar from AN Sinha Institute of Social Studies, Patna. Today we are going to learn the module Kinship Definition and its approaches from the paper Social Cultural Anthropology. The learning outcomes of this module is to understand the discovery, history, and structure of kinship. You will also learn the nature of kinship and genealogical basis of society. You will learn about the different approaches of kinship terminology, its usage, rules of descent, etc. And you will also able to understand the importance of kinship while conducting any fieldwork. The word kinship has been used to mean several things indeed. The situation is so complex that it is necessary to simplify it in order to study it. Kinship relationship has several references which must be kept sharply separated. There are biological referents, behavioral referent, and linguistic referents, among others. According to the dictionary, kinship has to do with relationships by blood or consanguinity, affinity with relationships through marriage. All cultures distinguish various categories of kins and affins, and these categories with their associated pattern of rights and obligations make up what social anthropologists call kinship system. In some societies, every individual is or think he is related by kinship or affinity to everyone else. In others, including most Western ones, a man's kins and affines are limited for practical purposes to a few close relatives. But in every society, there is some relationship of kinship and affinity which are culturally recognized. Biologically, not only human beings but also animals have kinship, but the vital point is that, unlike other animals, human beings consciously and explicitly use the categories of kinship to define social relationships. The scientific study of kinship systems is only a century old, but in that brief period it has engendered more controversy and a great variety of theoretical formulations than have most aspects of human society. The early studies concentrated on the terminological systems for the most part and utilized them as evidences for historical relationships or as survivals of assumed earlier stages of society based on promiscuity and group marriage. The earlier anthropologist Lewis Henry Morgan was the founder of kinship studies. He watched, he observed the Iroquois, a Native American group in the northeastern United States. He was mostly interested in what was keeping societies together. He was the first to state the different types of kinship systems that exist in his book called Systems of Consanguinity and Affinity of the Human Family. The British scholar Radcliffe Brown brought the kinship studies in the new state by involving comparative method. Evans Pritchard, through his study of the Nuer, revealed its importance in political organization. Mayor Fortes, through his dynamics of clanship among the Ansai of Ghana, discussed descent group in details. G.P. Murdoch's social structure and Levi-Strauss' elementary structure of kinship are another classic examples in the kinship literature. Meaning and definition of kinship. The term kinship refers to a principle by which individuals or groups of individuals are organized into social groups, roles, categories, and genealogy by means of kinship terminology. Kinship is the method of reckoning relationship. In any society, every normal adult individual belongs to the two different nuclear families. The family in which he has been born and raised is called the family of orientation, and the other family to which he establishes relations through his marriage is called the family of procreation. The universal fact of individual membership in two nuclear families gives rise to the kinship system. As the name implies, it is a system of different relationships where individuals are bound together by a complex interlocking and ramifying ties. According to the Levi-Strauss, kinship and its related notions are at the same time prior and exterior to the biological relations to which we tend to reduce them. L. H. Morgan defines kin terms as reflected the forms of marriage and related makeup of the family, that is, system of consanguinity and affinity of women family. A. R. Radcliffe Brown in the year 1952 agreed that kinship terms are like signposts to interpersonal conducts or etiquette, with the implication of appropriate reciprocal right, duties, privileges, and obligations. McLennan agreed that kinship terms are merely forms of solution and was not related to actual blood ties at all. According to Beatty, kinship is not set of genealogical relationship, but it is a set of social relationships. Kinship approaches. To get a comprehensive view on kinship system, two types of approaches are required. At first, one has to delineate the structure of kinship roles, and secondly, he has to find out associated behavior to each structure and role in order to know the functional utility of the structure. The bond of kinship embraces a great range of people for which a whole group of related persons is held as entity, although it is not a social group but shows the character of groupings as well as institutions together. The structure of kinship roles not only reveals the types of relationship but also the specific kinship terms in a society. As per the types of relationships, kins are primarily divided into two groups: the real kin or the actual kin and the affinal kin. The term virtual kin is applied to the ceremonial kin and the social kin, that is, the kin relations that have been economically established and formed as a result of kin social contact. On the other hand, the real kins are the well organized relations formed through blood connections or through marriage. The kins that possess blood relation among them are called consanguineal kin, but the kin relations that develop due to marriage are called affinal kin. For example, in a family, the relationship between the spouses come under affinal kinship, whereas the relationship between the parents and a child can be marked under consanguineal kinship. An adopted child is treated as one's own biologically produced offspring, so it is also treated as consanguineal kin. Kinship is generally traced from an ego. All persons having relationship with the ego are defined in terms of kinship status. A father stands as a primary consanguineal kin to his children, and mother is the primary affinal kin to the father. When a person is related to ego through a primary kin, he is called the secondary kin. Father's sister, mother's mother, wife's mother, brother's wife, sister's son, etc. are the secondary kin to the ego. Secondary kins may also be classified into secondary consanguineal kin and the secondary affinal kin, basing on the nature of the tie. Kinship terms are terms of addressage which are used among the kinsmen of a society and to designate the kins of different types. There are personal names, but all societies use some specific kinship terms among the relatives which are used extensively. An intermediate form is also found between personal name and kinship term. It is called techonym. For instance, a person having a son or daughter is often called as the father of so and mother of so and so. This is the combination of parental term and child's name instead of referring the personal name or particular kinship term. Such terms are very important as they sometimes reflect social phenomena. Study of kinship nomenclature is still a significant method of study which was first undertaken by Lewis Henry Morgan after coining various kinship terms from different parts of the world. He divided the kinship term into two major divisions and named them as classificatory kinship system and the second is descriptive kinship system. Classificatory kinship system. In this system, all relatives were classed in categories following a strict logic. All of them were referred by the same term of designation. In the descriptive kinship system, there is a separate term for every kin, whereby such term describe the exact relation of ego with the kin in question. In reality, the words classificatory and descriptive refer to the kinship terms only, not to the whole system of terminology. G.P. Murdoch had identified six major systems of terminology on worldwide. They are Eskimo system, the Hawaiian system, the Iroquois system, the Omaha system, the Crow system, and the Sudanese system. Murdoch, in his detailed analysis of kinship, presents an elaborate scheme for understanding kinship terminology. According to him, kinship terms are technically classified in three different ways. The first is by the mode of use, the second is by the linguistic structure, and the third is by the range of application. The first one is by the mode of use. It is based on the mode of use. The kinship terms can be divided into further two sections. Some terms are for direct addressing and others are for indirect references. A term of address is used to call a relative, whereas term of reference used to designate a relative. for speaking about him or her to a third person. By the linguistic structures, when classified according to linguistic structure, kinship terms are distinguished as elementary, derivative, and descriptive. An elementary term is an irreducible word like in English, father, nephew, which cannot be analyzed into components having kinship meanings, therefore called as elementary term. A derivative term is one which combines two or more elementary terms to denote a specific relative. A derivative term is like grandfather, father-in-law, stepdaughter, etc. Here we use two terms to denote a specific relation to some person. By the range of application, here the kinship term is differentiated into two groups, denotative term and classificatory term. Denotative terms apply to the relatives of a single kinship category defined by the generation, sex, and genealogical connection. For example, the English term brother, sister, daughter, son-in-law, etc. denote several persons with the same designation. In contrast, classificatory term is the term that applies to the persons of two or more kinship categories. For instance, in English, the term grandmother stands for both mother's mothers and father's mother. Uncle may be brother of one of the parents, either mother or father, or maybe husband of a father's sister or mother's sister. Kinship usage. The study of kinship does not restrict itself with the description of the kins or basis of their classification or general forms of kinship behavior. There are certain special kinship usages which hold special significance in respect to the non-literate societies. These are avunculate, imitate, covert, avoidance, and joking relationship. Avunculate is a queer usage found between a mother's brother and his sister's children. Among some matrilineal societies, maternal uncle assumes many of the duties of father as a matter of convention. His nephew and niece remain under his authority. They inherit his property also. Such a relationship exists among the Trobriand islanders of Melanesia, the Fijians, the African tribes, and the Nayars of Kerala. The second kinship usage is imitate. This kind of usage is more or less similar to the avunculate and found among the patrilineal people. Here, father's sister great respect and prime importance. She is more than mother to her nephew and exerts her authority on him in many events of life. In fact, it is a social mechanism which protects fathers, sisters from falling into neglect, especially in the situations when they are driven off from their in-laws' house. Polynesian Tonga, Todas of South India, etc. communities exhibit this type of kinship usage. The third is covert, which is another strange usage of kinship between a husband and his wife. Toda and Khasi communities of India can be cited as examples of covert. Here, the husband is compelled to undergo an austere life whenever his wife gives birth to a child. He has to maintain a strict diet and to observe a number of taboos along with his wife. Anthropologists regard coverts as a symbolic representation of establishing paternity on the child. Some years back, this particular usage was popular among the Nayars of South India. Another use of kinship is avoidance. In most of the societies, the usage of avoidance is act as an incest taboo. A father-in-law avoids his daughter-in-law according to the traditional social norms. Same relation prevails between a mother-in-law and between husband's elder brother and younger brother's wife. This is actually a protective measure against incestuous sexual relations among close relatives who remain in face-to-face contact every day. The last usage of kinship is joking relationship. It is just the opposite type of kinship usage in contrast to avoidance relationship. This special privileged relationship indulges in testing each other by different kinds of jokes, including vulgar jokes. Usually, such relationships exist between a man and his wife's younger sister, or between a woman and her husband's younger brothers, between cross cousins, between grandparents and grandchildren. Joking relationships are found in tribal as well as caste societies. Anthropologists consider the kinship terms in a society as extremely functional as well as resistant to change. These terms not only distinguish the relatives but also indicate the form of families, rules of residence, rules of descent, and many other important features of a social system. In almost all societies, kinship connections are very significant. An individual always possesses certain obligations towards his kinsmen, and he also expects the same from his kinsmen. The rules which affiliate each person to a particular and definable set of kin are called the rules of descent. The word succession denotes the transmission of rights, and the word inheritance refers the right over the parental property. Usually, both the rights go hand in hand. However, three rules that have been identified with regard to descent. The first is unilineal descent, the principle whereby descent is traced through paternal or maternal line, that is patrilineal descent and matrilineal descent. Matrilineal descent is descent from an ancestress down through a series of female links, for example through daughter, daughter's daughter, daughter's daughter's daughter. Double descent, a system whereby two sets of social groups or categories exist for different purposes in the same society. One need one based on patrilineal descent and the other on matrilineal descent. The example of this type of descent is Yako of Nigeria. Cognatic descent from an ancestress through a series of links that can be male or female or any combination of the two. The bilateral descent is the principle whereby descent is traced through males, that is father, and female, that is mother. Ambilineal descent is the principle whereby descent is reckoned through male and female links with or without order. Descent group. A descent group is a social group whose members talk about common ancestry, such as lineage, clan, phratry, and moiety. These are descent groups. The lineage is a consanguineal kin group produced by either of unilinear descent is technically known as lineage. It produces only persons who can actually trace their common relationship through a specific series of remembered genealogical linkage in the prevailing line of descent. A lineage generally includes ancestors of 5 to 6 generations in a sequence. Lineage may be of two types, patrilineage and matrilineage. A lineage is always strict exogamous unit. It helps in smooth maintenance of the purity and pollution relating to birth and death. All members of a lineage have full psychological unity. Lineage provides social security to its members. During the time of crisis, the lineage members united and cooperate with each other. Clan is a unilineal kinship group larger than a lineage. Here, the members are supposed to be descendant from a common ancestor, but the genealogical links are not specified. Clans are exogamous in nature. Clans can be categorized into several types: patrilineal clan, matrilineal clan, ancestral clan, totemic clan, territorial clan, etc. Phratry is another descent group. An interrelation between two or more clans makes phratry. It is therefore a larger unilineal descent group than a clan. A phratry may or may not be exogamous. For example, 13 clans among Crow Indians are found to be grouped into 6 nameless phratries, 4 of which are not strict in the rules for the marriage. Moiety is the largest unilineal social group, which results from the splitting of a society into two layers on the basis of descent. The word moiety comes from the French word meaning half. Moieties may be exogamous or endogamous. Uniqueness of kinship in anthropology. It is of interest to anthropologists because it has also political, religious, and economic aspects. Actors' models of kinship relation can be seen as their insight into workings of society. That is a model and explanation of dynamics and relationships. In anthropology, kinship is the web of social relationships that form an important part of the lives of most humans in most societies, although its exact meanings even within this discipline are often debated. Anthropologists like Robin Fox states that the study of kinship is the study of what man does with these basic facts of life: mating, gestation, parenthood, socialization, siblingship, etc. Uniqueness of kinship in anthropology. Kinship deserves the quality of a unique branch of study. In a given society, it defines the functions each social unit. Also, its ubiquity bears the interest to find out its variance of structure in different social environment. A society's structure persons into categories or positions according to a number of principles, and the most important principle is kinship. As Nelson and Grabner have mentioned in the book Reading in Kinship and Social Structure, the importance of kinship in the study of society are: kinship systems are universal, kinship systems are always important, through in different though in different degrees in the structure of all human societies. In the majority of societies traditionally studied by anthropologists, kinship has been one of the major organizing principles. Kinship systems are relatively to identify and tend themselves to fairly simple analysis. Kinship systems are relatively to identify and tend themselves to fairly simple analysis. There are certain symbols which are employed in the study of kinship, such as the circle represents a female. Similarly, a male is represented by a triangle. The descent is represented by a single vertical line. Siblings are represented by two vertical lines connected on the top by a straight or horizontal line. Marriage is denoted by an equal sign. Death is denoted by crossing of circle, that is female, and crossing of triangle, that is male. So students, now let us summarize what we have discussed about kinship and its usage. Kinship refers to a principle by which individuals or groups of individuals are organized into social groups, roles, categories, and genealogies by means of kinship terminologies. Kinship is the method of reckoning relationship. The family in which the person is born and reared is called the family of orientation, and the other family to which he establishes relation through marriage is called as the family of procreation. The scientific study of kinship system is only a century old, but in that brief period it has engendered more controversy and a great variety of theoretical formulation than have most aspects of human society. The early studies concentrated on the terminological systems for the most part and utilized them as evidence for historical relationships or as survivals of assumed earlier stages of society based on promiscuity and group marriage. The anthropologists like Lewis Henry Morgan was the founder of kinship studies. Other anthropologists have also studied the kinship, such as Radcliffe, Brown, who, and Evans Pritchard. Evans Pritchard have studied Nuers. Mayor Fortes, G.P. Murdoch have also studied kinship in anthropology. To get a comprehensive view on kinship system, two types of approaches are required. At first, one has to delineate the structure of kinship roles. Secondly, he has to find out associated behavior to each structure and role in order to know the functional utility of the structure. In anthropology, kinship is the wave of social relationship that form an important part of the lives of most humans in most societies, although its exact meanings, even within this discipline, are often debated. Kinship deserves the quality of a unique branch of study in a given society. It defines the functions each social unit has. A society's structure persons into categories or position according to a number of principles, and the most important principle is kinship. Thank you.